we learn in Malachi about 4 categories of people. The tzaddik, the righteous one, the rasha, the wicked one who serves God, and number 4, the one who doesn't serve God. So let's look at category number 3. That is the Beinoni, the one who is serving God. And when it comes to the word serving God, it's because he's actively engaged in wrestling with the evil of his animal soul in order to not allow the animal soul to conquer the small city in thought, speech, and action. So you might be wondering, why is the Beinoni the one who is called serving God? What about the tzaddik, right? We would think, first of all, the tzaddik is the one who's serving God. But no, the tzaddik is his own separate category, because the tzaddik isn't called one who's serving God. It's called an Eved Hashem, one who's a servant of God. Meaning the tzaddik is not an active service. Why? Because they're not wrestling with the evil in their animal soul. As King David said, my heart is empty within me. They've already accomplished that mission. So now the word servant of God is more like the title you would give to a king or a sage. Meaning they've already achieved it. In a way, it's static in that way. And versus the Beinoni is one who's actively serving God because they're in that continuous struggle with the evil in the left side of the heart to not allow it to conquer the small city. So this is really a turning point in Tanya where we're appreciating the Mila, the advantage of the Beinoni, even over the Tzaddik. Because the Tzaddik, of course, one who is a servant of God, it's a beautiful title, it's a beautiful level to have reached. But we're saying is actually not, like, the one who is serving God, who's active service, right? That loyal, like, soldier, if you will, in God's army. Who is that? The one who's actively engaged in the battle is the Beinoni. So we're starting to appreciate who the Beinoni is. And ultimately, you have to remember who the Alter Rebbe is writing the Tanya for. He's writing it for the Jew who's struggling with their divine service and feels like maybe my divine service is worthless. Maybe I could just never compare to the tzaddik. And we're learning that tzaddik's role is really the role of like a different creation. It's a completely different role. And I have to really understand the Mila, the advantage of my role, of how I can serve God even if I'm struggling. And we learn more than just even if I'm struggling. It's actually through struggling that I'm really able to be serving God in the active sense. So now we want to understand, who is the one who isn't serving God? Who is that person? Because we have the tzaddik, we have the rasha, and we have the Beinoni. So seemingly who's left? And I think the one who isn't serving God is the rasha. So like, who is this mystery box human being? It's the Beinoni who doesn't need to put in any effort. Okay? It's a different category of Beinoni. Why? Because by their very nature, they're not lusting after the desires of the world. And they actually love still studying Torah all day. That's just the nature of their animal soul that they've been given. And so what that means is that they're not actively having to put in effort in order to keep their Beinoni status. So here's the question. They're not a tzaddik. They still have the evil within their left side of their heart is still alive and well and has to be, challenge them in some way. Otherwise, we might, maybe that's more like our Beinoni with their animal sleeping or something like that. But like still, there has to be some level of work. Otherwise, how is the evil in their animal soul not able to come and capture the small city? So the answer is like this. Because what does this Beinoni do? He arouses his inherent love, his havas misoteris, and this allows him to maintain enough das to be able to keep the standard of life going. Meaning, when the evil in their animal soul threatens to rule over the entire city and capture them, all they simply need to do is just meditate on any thought that is going to arouse that inherent love, like Enel Milvado, there's nothing but God. And through that simple thought alone, they're able to arouse a base level of love for God. And through that, they have enough das, enough God consciousness that it keeps them from both actively sinning, nor neglecting any positive mitzvah. So you might be wondering, why isn't this considered active service, right? They're actively arousing their inherent love. But the answer the Alter Rebbe gives is because this is not something outside of themselves. This is an inheritance. It's not something they worked for. This Havas Misoteris is an inheritance that we got from Avram and Sarah. It's within every single Jew. And it's Kikar of Alacha Davar Ma'od. It's very easy to arouse this love. And therefore it isn't called active service. Alternatively, there could be another scenario of how this Beinoni becomes one who doesn't serve God. And that is at first they really work on themselves and they're struggling with their animal soul and they're constantly fighting and constantly winning. And after a certain amount of time, it becomes their nature. Right? So they're actually functioning from autopilot. And even though it looks like an extraordinarily high level, right? So always going for the mitzvah and never doing the opposite. But still, because they're not actively putting in effort, they're not serving God. They're just actually at this point going by their very nature. And this really shows us why it's important that we can never compare ourselves to anyone else because we never know the inner effort that someone needs to be putting in. And with ourselves, we don't need to be obsessed with what level am I in. The question is, am I actively serving God? Because if I'm actively working on myself, I'm in this category of, right? We're in that category of serving God. And it's also allowing ourselves to feel good about it. Like, wow, I'm actively serving God. Meaning, if here comes a struggle, if here comes the fact that I need to wrestle with myself in order to be able to serve God, it's not like, oh, I wish I was at Sonic if only, I didn't even have this struggle. No, the fact that I have this struggle is why I'm actually able to be one who is actively in service of serving God. And so it's really beautiful just knowing that Hashem knows the heart, and only Hashem knows the heart, so we cannot judge other people. We never know the inner battles someone's going through. And we don't need to. That's not our place. Our place is to love and accept other people, and with our own selves to appreciate and value our efforts, and with other people to also be able to give that message of A is for effort. Because we live in a world of externalities where we just judge people on how much money do you have and how much success do you have. Well, those are external things, and those don't really have much to do with someone's inner world. But when we see someone's effort and we actually acknowledge, especially in a child, we acknowledge the effort more than the outcome, we're instilling this value that Hashem acknowledges the effort that we put into serving Him.